I would offer to you that there was a lot that distracted a lot of people about 2020. But for me, I had that added piece. And the reason I bring that in is that what a lot of people saw, I think, at work was me demonstrating and leveraging my knowledge and skills. What they didn't see day in and day out was everything below the waterline. And I wanted to share this image to get that point across. I also wanted to share it because, hey, who doesn't love an iceberg metaphor? I mean, we live for this, right? So the rest of the iceberg, it can be as simple as hobbies and interests, but it can also be identity, the way that mental health is affecting us, hidden skills that we haven't brought to the fore yet, experiences, plans, hopes, all these things that represent all of us. I don't know about you all, but when I started my career, there was a tendency to talk about leaving all of the stuff that in this image is below the waterline, quote unquote, at the door. So I want to dig into the Komatsu example and share a little of what we've been doing at Komatsu in those 5 years that we've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of the most important things I think that we've done, and you may have picked up by now, I like the idea of marrying, if you will, soft ideas to the core business that we have. Because being in the HR space, and particularly being in the talent space, I've been smacked with the label of soft skills for a long, long time. And I think a lot of us who work in that space that's been labeled as soft skills at times know that those are some of the most difficult and foundational skills to develop. But when you can marry that softer side of business with the core of the business and the core of the business's aims, I think you've got something.
Yeah, so we kind of gone after some of the infrastructure. So going function by function and looking at our jobs. And one of the earlier sessions, we were talking about whether jobs are really the thing of the future or it's work to be done. But being on the receiving side of that, it's you take an L&D job, for example, and instead of thinking about how will you post for this, how will you do talent planning for this based on education, background, those types of things, or even responsibilities, you got to get to what are the skills. And we've forced ourselves across all areas to say 8 skills or less. And so we have such probably the same thing at Komatsu, just really detailed view of it. But if you could say what are the top 8 skills that you need and what proficiency levels, and it changed the language because people weren't used to talking about talent that way.
I see a couple other notes I just want to acknowledge. Dirk mentioned hybrid work arrangements, which I think comes back to that idea of flexibility and empathy that I've said in other settings is one of the things that we did in 2020 that we need to bring forward and not lose sight of, because I think it was a good place for us to go as organizations to learn how we could do that. Anna talked about AbbVie's regulatory function, having programs where employees can do short stints in other parts of the function that they're interested in. I think that's great. What a great way for people to explore what a career could look like.
And Irish, just real quick, to tie back to your slide at the beginning of the iceberg. You know, remote work, in my opinion, is all that stuff below the iceberg. So if we just focus on the tip, the stuff that we see, we're really missing out on the opportunities to tap the whole person. There's so much being missed out.
Yeah, great point. Great point. I think about all the backgrounds we saw from people, and you kind of got this interesting glimpse into people's lives for a little while that I think was a surprise to a lot of people in some cases, and hopefully a pleasant one. I think mostly a pleasant one.